an NP job is obviously the light at the end of the tunnel when you're in nurse practitioner school, but actually nailing down a job can be super stressful and overwhelming. In today's video, I'll talk about the 10 websites, methods, and organizations I use in order to find my first job as a family nurse practitioner. And then I'll talk about some helpful tips and tools that I used in order to make the whole application process a little bit easier on you. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I was you just a couple of months ago. So I totally remember how hard it was to find a job as a new NP. Fortunately, through the methods I will talk about, I was able to find a job and start within 3 months of graduating from my NP program, and hopefully you will too. So let's start with talking about my 10 websites, places that I utilized in order to actually find jobs. The first one is Indeed.com, and I'll list all of the websites I talk about here down below in the description box. So Indeed was actually the place that I found my job. You know, you can put in your area you were looking in, and you can talk about, type in your job descriptions, and they'll send you email bursts. I usually just scanned it, went there like every 2 days, and applied to all the new ones I could find that sort of applied to me. Only warning with this one I would say is sometimes you have to be careful because you'll put in like nurse practitioner and it just sends you a ton of registered nurse jobs because the formatting of it isn't that great for NPs yet. But like I said, I did find my job through Indeed, so I highly recommend you go on there as well. The second wonderful place to find a job is at your clinical sites. Probably a third of my graduating class got jobs through their clinical sites just by saying like, hey, I liked my clinical experience here. I would love to be a part of your organization. And even if they weren't able to give them a job on the spot, they could take their resume and say like, when we have an opening, we'll contact you. And a ton of people did get contacted that way. So just remember, like I said in my video about excelling in clinical, which if you haven't seen, I'll link it up here in the description down below. The whole time you're at clinical, you just want to be your best, most employable self so that when you're about to leave, they're like, oh man, I don't want you to go. I want you to stay. Let's hire you. And getting a job at your clinical site is great because then you already know the culture of the place. You know, do I want to work here? Because you might be like, oh no, you could not pay me enough money to work here. And that's a good thing to know as well. Number 3 is ZipRecruiter. Again, a lot like Indeed, you kind of put your resume, a couple of facts in, they send you emails. I still get emails from there. I really need to get off of there, but another great website with a bunch of jobs. Number 4 are federally qualified health centers. So I've talked about these in other videos. These are usually health centers that provide care to underserved populations, but they are a super great learning opportunity. I did a lot of my clinicals in school at these centers, and they just provide a really educational, wonderful place to kind of get your feet wet and as a launching zone. Bonus, some federally qualified health centers, if you work there, the government will actually pay some of your student loans back if you work there for, I think 2 years. So in order to find your federally qualified health center, just go to your friend Google, type in federally qualified health center and then your state, and it will bring you to the site. On that site, you would search for provider jobs or careers, and that will bring you to either a list of job pages or a recruiter. I personally reached out, emailed the recruiter, and I said, hey, this is me, this is where I live. I'd love jobs within a certain mile radius. And Clint, bless his heart, he tried so hard, but I lived in far too urban of an area and all the jobs were very, very rural that were available at the time. So Clint, thank you. You were a rock star. You tried real hard, but just didn't work out. But I know a lot of people have succeeded by getting jobs at federally qualified health centers, so maybe you will too. The 5th is local healthcare systems and hospitals website. So I live in North Carolina, so I went to Duke and I was like, Duke Healthcare Systems, and then it takes you to their healthcare page and you search all over there. And they also list their jobs for not only the hospital, but also like all their satellite clinics. So that's a great place to just see all of that health systems jobs all in one place. And usually they save your resume too, so then you can do quick apply for all your secondary applications. The 6th is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, I honestly didn't know anything about. I feel like as nurses, that's not something we really get plugged into, whereas other majors in college really focus on LinkedIn. So make yourself a LinkedIn profile. You can upload your resume if you want. And then LinkedIn actually has job boards where you can search for jobs. But a really cool part about LinkedIn that I liked is you can reach out to recruiters for those healthcare systems we just talked about. So I would kind of message those recruiters, Duke provider recruiter, I would search for, and I would get these people and then I would message them just saying, hey, I'm Liz, I'm a family nurse practitioner seeking a job in a family practice. I'd love to chat with you more if you have any opportunities in those areas. And a couple of them did respond back, and they were like, hey, no, we looked over your resume, we're gonna put it in a file. If we find anything, we'll get back to you. So who knows if they actually would, but it's never ever harmful to reach out and make those connections. If you don't know a lot about LinkedIn, like I knew nothing and I still pretty much know nothing, I'll link a video down below of a YouTube video that helps explain LinkedIn for people like me who are a little bit challenged when it comes to that. 7th is either through the AANP, ANCC, whatever you are taking your certifying board exam through, you are probably going to pay to be part of their organization so that your test is a little bit cheaper. And when you do that, you have access to their website and jobs will post to there because they know that's the hub for NPs in your specialty. So whatever entity you're taking your boards through, go to their website and see if they have job postings there. It's also a really good place to find preceptors because people who are willing to precept will put their information on there as well. Number 8 is your state's nursing association. All states have a nursing association. Some states even have a nurse practitioner organization. If you have an NP organization, obviously go through that. On their website, they will have a jobs page. Places like North Carolina, they just have a nursing association, and under that is a chapter that is the NP organization. So, but you can still go to their website and you just go under, I Googled North Carolina NP organization and it's the first thing that comes up. So if you just Google that, go on there, and one of the first things across the very top is jobs. The 9th is the ENP network. So this is a website, I will link it down below. And this is a national nurse practitioner kind of website database that for jobs, for preceptors. This is a cool place to go if you really like are open to moving and you're just like, where's the jobs at? You can specify it by city, you can specify it obviously by specialty, and that's kind of easy because you don't have to go to each individual state, like I said, especially if you're looking at maybe moving. And the 10th is a little bit untraditional, but a couple of my classmates actually had it work really well. They would just print their resume and go into offices. They would kind of go into the office, they had their resume with them, they would deliver it to the people at the front desk, and then they would ask if they could talk to the office manager. And if they got to, they could give a little spiel about this is what they are, you know, this is what they could provide. And that kind of just opens up the door. Like maybe they were sort of on the cusp of like, maybe we're gonna hire someone, and then you walk in and it's just like dropping in their lap and it's like perfect. A couple of my friends actually got jobs through this in specialty clinics like dermatology, where they were kind of like tossing the idea of maybe bringing someone on, and they walked in, they were like, hey, I'm here. They were like, okay, cool, welcome. So they got jobs that way. So that's always an option if you're feeling a little bit bold and other things aren't really panning out that well. And going in person is just showing them too, like, I'm really serious about this. It's bringing everything you get to the table. So if all else fails, you can always try that. So those are my 10 tips. Now I want to talk really quickly about how many I applied to and some tips for success. So what was kind of my strategy in applying for jobs? I just threw a broad net. So I applied to over 150 jobs before I heard back. And I really just applied to anything that I would actually want, but not necessarily ticked all my boxes. You know, I didn't do anything that was like weekends only or had any evening hours or was in a specialty area that I was like, that sounds terrible. But pretty much I had otherwise a fairly large net. I kind of drew a radius in my mind of like, this is how far I'd be willing to drive. I really wanted part-time, but I did apply to a ton of full-time because I realized that I might have to work a little before going part-time. So that would be my recommendation for you, would be throw a large net, but really don't apply to anything if you really automatically know that is not for me. And I just want to say, applying to jobs is one of the most like demoralizing, awful things in the world. And I just want to offer you some encouragement that you will get one. It will be okay. I know right now it's just a terrible feeling because you feel like you're offering yourself up to the world and everyone's just like not even bothering to respond, which is the worst. Like, why can't people just respond and be like, no, thank you. Even that's better than firing them off into the void where you're like, I don't even know if you're getting this. Like, what's wrong with me? But guys, I promise you, you will get a job. It will be okay. And try not to compare yourself to all your friends who are getting these super awesome jobs that like floated down from heaven, and they're just like, yeah, I'm making like all this money and I work 1 day a week and yeah, they're paying for everything. And you're like, you will get a job. It will be okay. I promise. You got this. There are always those people that get those dream jobs and you're just like, what am I not doing? You know, I know you do. And now before we go, I just wanted to give you some of my tips that I would highly encourage you to implement. This is where you're gonna learn from my mistakes here in the whole application process, okay? I forged this road for you. Do not follow in my footsteps. You're gonna wanna make sure you're super prepared for this whole process. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is just make your resume visually appealing. I will link some videos down below of resources that I used in order to kind of make my resume stand out a little bit, because you want a resume that's going to be visually appealing, but also have very easy to read and grab information that gives you a snapshot of who you are and why you would be beneficial for this company that's looking at you. And I am by no means the resume expert, so I will link that video down below and let them do all the talking. But you wanna make sure that that's kind of set beforehand, because there's no point in sending your resume out to all these companies if your resume is just kind of like, meh, super boring, okay? The second thing you're gonna wanna make sure you have is your letters of recommendation or your references lined up. So this is not something I thought very far ahead on, but you're gonna wanna talk to these people before and be like, can you be someone who would do a letter of rec for me? Ask your preceptors in clinical, guys, now. Go back a semester. Did you have a preceptor you really jived with? Ask them, when I go to get a job, would you be willing to write me a letter or be a reference? Might as well knock that out now. I waited until way too late, and one of my favorite preceptors was in like New Zealand for a 2-month-long trek through nature. I was like, well, this is not helpful while I'm trying to find a job. So don't be me, ask early. They could even write the letter early. There you go. I would definitely recommend getting them from your preceptors because they've seen you in a clinical environment. I didn't get any from my job because I found my nursing job was kind of annoyed that I was leaving to go be an NP. So I didn't go that route. I think the preceptor route's the way to go, but if your job's like, hey, high five, way to go, then sure, get it from your manager now because they've obviously seen you from a work ethic standpoint. The third tip I would recommend would be to gather your self-promotion and write it down. And by that, I just mean write down why you are good for these jobs, what your clinical experiences have been, what procedures you're good at, what patients you primarily saw, what you're comfortable with, things that you are going to say to like boost yourself up. Like, I'm great with mental health, I'm great with women's health, I've done X, Y, and Z, and my past nursing experience has provided me with these skills and yada, yada. Because you can come up with a lot that are like, oh yeah, I'm pretty great. And then someone calls you on the phone and they're like, so tell me why you are a great candidate. And all that comes out of your mouth is like, I went to school for this. Guys, it doesn't sound good. You're gonna be flustered when you get that phone call, especially when you pick up the phone and you think it's your landlady who you're kind of annoyed with, but it ends up being someone you may eventually work for, not speaking from experience at all. And they ask you and you're like, I went to school for this. Don't be me, guys. Write those down, write them in a little note in your phone. That way, when you encounter that situation, you can go down your checklist and be like, yeah, I'm pretty great, look at me. And the fourth thing to just kind of be vaguely familiar with, know what kind of salary you want and know what your role is. If you get a phone call back, that was one of the first things they asked me was, what is your salary you're looking for? And they asked me questions about my role because they weren't entirely sure of what the role of a nurse practitioner could do and the scope of practice. So that was something I needed to already have in my back pocket because it doesn't sound good if you're like, I'm not sure, I'm gonna go look that up real quick. So just kind of be familiar with your role and what you want from them in case they ask that on their initial screening questions. All right, so those are my 10 places that I used in order to find my job and some tips for success as you battle through this employment situation, which, guys, just remember, I promise you got this. You will get a job. This is hard, but you will get through it. I promise. I remember I was just there with you. Hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. If you're brand new here, I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner and I make nursing content videos just like this once a week, and I do a weekly vlog on Saturdays where I document my life as a family nurse practitioner. So if that sounds like it's something that's interesting to you, make sure to subscribe down below. I'd love to have you in my YouTube family, and head on over to Instagram where I post clinical tips about like what I see at work, how I handle things, and then cute pictures of my dog and Avery because why not? Everybody else who's coming back, thank you so much for your continued support. I appreciate you following along as always. Now for our question of the day, what websites do you guys use and like when searching for jobs? Or if you already have a job, what website or method did you use to actually get your job? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm excited to hear from you, and you guys learn usually the most through each other. So make sure to head on down to the comments and check those out. Hope you guys have a fabulous rest of your week. I will see you later. Bye.